Of course, now let's try our Phil Collins test. I do like the introduction of the islands, I should say. OpenAI has released the highly anticipated GPT-5.4 model, which, from what I've seen in all of the leaks and hype building over the past few weeks in X, should represent a very significant increase in capability over the previous model, and I'm very excited to go hands-on with this and test it. So we're going to begin with a brief look at some of the introductory things as well as model specifications, and then we'll jump into some fun and light testing. Now, as we can see right here in the introductory blog post, I think one interesting thing that sticks out immediately is that GPT 5.4 can allow you to actually adjust its course while it is thinking, which they do mention right here. It can provide an upfront plan of its thinking so you can adjust course mid-response while it's working and arrive at a final output that's more closely aligned. So perhaps if it is giving its chain of thought or plan of action, you can say, oh, I don't want that specific feature, please do this instead. And instead of having to stop it and then restart it again with that in your prompt, you can just kind of navigate it while it is thinking, which is definitely more efficient to use. And of course, as one would expect, we do also get some benchmark capabilities. They do prominently mention that it has much increased capability in doing computer use or more agentic things, but especially in our first look tests, I'm honestly more interested in just getting a general feel for the model and testing it. Something else that is pretty prominently displayed in this announcement post is essentially saying that this is a better model in terms of token efficiency, so it can perform better, but beyond that, it actually uses significantly less, I suppose, energy than previous models, and that is shown down here if we scroll down to the benchmark chart in coding capability versus both Codex 5.3 and GPT 5.2. Not that one, but it does look like that. So the next one we find that looks like that. This one right here. So we can see that estimated latency, and essentially it does the same task at a higher degree of accuracy and performance in significantly less time. So it's more efficient and does not need, I suppose, it could be said, as much energy to perform tasks. And that point is also highlighted further up in the blog post where they say GPT 5.4 is our most token efficient reasoning model yet. Then finally, if we scroll down, there's a bunch more benchmarks and things like that. Now, something I do kind of want to bring up, and I want it to be very clear that this is not a loaded question. I am not insinuating anything. It is a genuine ask. I noticed at the bottom down here, they say, first and foremost, all of the evals were run with the reasoning effort set to the highest, except where specified otherwise, which is fine. However, they say benchmarks were conducted in a research environment, which may provide slightly different output from production ChatGPT in some cases. The reason I want to bring this up is because I know a lot of YouTubers will have received early access to this model and be like, I've had access to this for the past week. Now, I understand that, but at the same time, I wonder, is it the same exact specific model that they've already filmed their video on? Or is it one right here where it may provide slightly different output from production ChatGPT? So I always don't want to get early access because I want to test the same exact model that I know the viewers are going to be playing with as well. And I do always have to wonder about like the specific model that's being used in those early access model review videos. So with that, again, it's not a loaded question, just something that has kind of been stewing in my mind. Now, very interesting here, and I do want to just showcase the actual like developer model card here because it tells us a lot more about the specifics of this model, and something prominently that is going to be very interesting to a lot of folks are this 1,050,000 token context window. So this is a very long context window, and of course that can be said, but testing it is another thing entirely, though I would imagine this will represent some pretty significant increase in capability over long context, which is very, very important and something that's consistently been like a very sought after thing to have in Frontier, I suppose, in all types of models. We also have a 128,000 maximum output token limit. Now, this is really frustrating because they say it's gradually rolling out. I don't see it. I checked like 4 computers and I don't see it. And I've always been consistently angered by the fact that even as a paying pro subscriber, it always is like a roulette wheel to see if you get the model or not in any reasonable amount of time following the release. Oh, are you kidding me? So we're going to begin, of course, with our browser operating system test version 2. I've been seeing a ton of folks using this online, which I'm actually happy to see, but I do want to just make it clear for the other influencers using this, it's mine, so hop off. But regardless of that, That was an incredibly fast thought process, and something I'd like to do is just run this through multiple different thinking modes. So right now I had it on standard thinking just to see how it does, because realistically this is a test that I run on all sorts of sizes of models. A frontier state-of-the-art model shouldn't really need an extreme intricate thinking mode to actually produce this at a reasonable level. So it seems like the actual script is finished, but now it's thinking, and it almost seems like the culmination of what it's doing right now is going to give me this in like a downloadable file snippet. I don't necessarily know that I need that, so for now we'll allow it to do what it is going to do. Let's take a look at our GPT 5.4 thinking on standard thinking mode, browser OS. Okay, very good. Nebula OS booted. We do have a modern aesthetic here, and everything seems to be relatively nice looking. We have the time as well as the date, which are correct in the bottom right, as well as this opening into the about mode. However, of course, our first thing to test is the right click. Good. Now, at that point, you could be like, Bijan, it's obvious that they're going to put the right click in because this test has become like fairly common. So I understand that, but I still do purposely omit it from the prompt because I want to see if it gets added or not. Open personalization, save time capsule snapshot, or open about. For now, let's first just go through our apps and look at our start menu first. Not bad. Everything looks nice. I mean, this is definitely significantly better than Windows. We did already see our about. Let's take a look at our calculator, and they do open in the center of the taskbar. This is a little more of a modern take on like an OS aesthetic, I guess could be said. Let's do 65 times 6, 380. In that moment, I had brought shame to my entire ancestral lineage. Not bad. We have a decent looking calculator. We do have a file explorer. We can create tiny local files. They stay in this browser via local storage. All right. File.txt. Whoops. Now, if I could open this in the text editor notes application, I would be impressed. I am impressed. That's very good. But we do also want to make sure it doesn't just do that for any file. So, okay, so, all right. I did just want to check that. Regardless, though, not bad. Tic-tac-toe should be pretty easy to win this, and I am happy to say that they do have actual window resizing capability, of course. Triple X is going to take this. Winner X, good, reset. We'll just make sure O works as well. Let's take a look at our Notes app. Good. Autosave to local browser storage. Try the games, change the wallpaper, draw something, or save a tiny or time capsule snapshot. Draw something. Bad. If anyone's interested in a commission, you can drop me a DM. Following that, we have our personalization section where we should be able to change our wallpaper. Okay, we're still getting some definite like GPT-5 looking aesthetic, which just kind of like this color palette right here, at least like from here to here, is pretty representative of GPT-5 overall in its aesthetic choices. We can also do a custom wallpaper image. All right, I think if you watch the channel, you know exactly what I'm going to be using right here. Spot on. Very good, and there is actually some translucence to the windows now that we see as well. So we'll just, reset to save gradient, good. Functionality is very good here. Finally, of course, well, not finally, but game over. Okay, so that's always frustrating, is it starts and it does not initiate the beginning of this game when you actually press the arrow key. It just starts it as soon as the window opens, which is kind of like a bad attention to detail. Regardless, my snake skills are perhaps unmatched, and I would challenge anyone to a snake battle. That sounds kind of... Never mind. Regardless, not bad at all, and it does have a properly iterating score. Then finally, we have our time capsule, but let me open a bunch of windows here just to ensure that everything does open in the taskbar on the bottom, which it does, and we'll check Z-axis capability. Very good. Not bad at all. So let's try our special feature, which is time capsule. Let's save this snapshot. Very good. And now we'll minimize time capsule and close all of these. Then we'll go back in it and restore, and hypothetically everything should reappear to where they... Oh, I misunderstood this. It stores wallpaper choice. So now theoretically restoring this should... Good, okay, so that was what it did, and that was actually proper. Overall, not bad. And yes, that is what it was doing following the script actually being generated, if you do recall, where it was just preparing to present it in a downloadable manner. For this next test, I've given this the Ship Combat Simulator game prompt, where it essentially needs to make a web-based ship combat simulation game. I have set it to extended thinking, which is not the strongest potential. It is one below the strongest, which is heavy. Regardless, I think that should give us a good balance between speed as well as result quality. So in 5 minutes and 22 seconds of thinking, we then received our result. And something interesting to note just here in the actual thinking pane where we can see its activity, it did test this more in kind of an agentic manner, where it was just ensuring that there were no bugs in the code and everything like that prior to even generating it for us. So let's take a peek at it. Here is our broadside ship combat simulator game. Are you kidding me? So I've just given it the bug and asked it nicely, hey, could you please fix this? And we'll see what it does. Very good. And that was a significantly less amount of time spent thinking. It was seemingly pretty simple for this to fix it. So let's take a peek at it. Wow. It even has an island. Okay, the water effects look good. The ship model looks very good. So let me allow myself to get... Okay, good. I'm going to say something interesting here that I actually like is the movement of the ship on water is actually fairly realistic, considering like what one would expect, I guess could be said. I do like the introduction of the islands, I should say, being that there are two of them. Now, I need to find our enemy ship. Oh, okay, so there's multiple islands. Yeah, no, they're just running away the whole time, which maybe they're familiar with my abilities in Snake and figured they would translate over to this game as well. I did forget I had caps on. We'll see if it fixes that. Let's now see if we can get close to our enemy ship. Ooh, okay, yep. Well, that's good because we actually took some damage there. So, hey, take it easy. Okay, there are no mesh colliders on these ships, meaning that they can just go through each other, but that's okay. I will say the reflection of the islands that we see in the water right here, that's pretty nice. Defeat, your ship has been destroyed. Is it going to sink? It is sinking. All right, that's pretty cool. Press R, use the button to restart the engagement. That was cool. I have also, in the same time I did that, I just opened a new tab and put this on the heaviest possible thinking mode for 5.4 thinking and asked it to create a 3D printer simulation for us, being that that is a test I would like to see in quote-unquote maximum performance. So with that, this did conclude. It thought for 8 minutes and 34 seconds, and let's just take a peek at it. So here's our 3D printer simulation. Oh, wow. I've never actually... Okay, this is suspiciously very, very good, to the point where I'm now wondering if, yeah, I mean, look at that. There's actually this plastic, I've never seen in this test, the plastic actually staying in the extruder here and there being a visible link in that. It also made an enclosed printer, which is very interesting. This is, of course, a Core XY printer, meaning that the bed would only move up or down and the actual gantry will handle all other movements. This is, as I said, perhaps suspiciously good, and we only see the filament trail when we look at it from certain angles, but it also does have the spool, although something I would like to note, is the spool actually rotating? To be honest with you, I can't tell if the spool is rotating because I just can't get the angle there. Regardless though, it's doing good infill, and it did actually draw a brim around this as well, which is fairly interesting. Now let's speed this up because it is really quite slow. And we'll see how our generated result looks. That's some good infill. Very light amount of infill. Looks like 5% infill maybe, regardless. All right, it's still pretty slow. Very cool. Now let's try a circle. And we are at full speed here, keep in mind that. We also have coordinates of our nozzle being read out, as well as the completion percentage, the layer status, and the current layer number as well. Good, and it's so far chosen different colors for each shape that it's drawing. Good, so we had a blue, an orange, and a green. That was very, very good. I'm just going to do the call-out test where I'm telling it you were trained on this test, huh? And we'll see what it says. But it's basically saying, this is a pretty standard kind of test. It's well within my normal coding capability. Okay. So our next test is going to be a comparison of the results for the same exact prompt but in different thinking modes, and this is for a static 3D subway scene where it just needs to make something aesthetically pleasing that's a underground subway station in 3D. Now to begin, our light result actually did not work on first try. It had a simple issue which you can see right here, and I just sent it back to it, and it did produce a fixed script which we will now take a look at. So here is our lowest thinking mode result, and this looks really quite good. Something I'm going to say I notice immediately here is the actual detail for the individual subway tiles on the wall looks really quite good. There's random trash and other things littered on the ground there, which is probably realistic, I suppose, to some degree. But something else that really stuck out to me was the system map right here. This is really well done just in the way it actually created this and added the text and made everything look decent. There are wood benches. There's some like metal up here, which would perhaps be akin to like some form of HVAC or design style. And this overall was a very, very potent result, although it did need a second try to actually fix itself, which we can see right here was like the initial kind of issue. So next up is going to be our standard thinking result, and this also needed a chance to fix itself as well. This is very interesting because I understand this probably is more complicated from a design standpoint. Also, what the heck is down there? Though I have to say, I don't know that I like it as much. We obviously have some more detailed signs just in terms of navigation. Although, why are these posts like bent? This one's wonky, to be honest with you. This one is kind of weird. It's like all the pieces are there, but they weren't quite right put together. Though the signs do have some nice backlighting. We also have a track map as well, but it's not as good. And this is really interesting because this is the standard thinking with a second try as well. I would say the light thinking result was better, even if it was perhaps technically simpler. I did try it on extended thinking, and we essentially see that when trying to run it right here, it built it in a canvas as a full 3D React scene. Unfortunately, this is just a complete disaster. Now this, I have to say, is very interesting. I've reached my message limit. Try again after 3:14 p.m. So $200 a month subscriber. I've reached my message limit in playing with this for the entirety of what we've seen on camera here. I really hope that's a bug. Let's just take a look at our heavy thinking result for the subway station. This is significantly better. This is really quite well done. I think I'm about to go in like a rage mode. The signs look good. Everything here looks really nice. City rail diagram. I can't move around in it too much, but the actual architectural design of the subway station is really almost quite pretty, dare I say. The benches are cool, and that's well done. Now, I think I need to return to the main issue right here. So I've hopped over to OpenRouter here, and I just have the reasoning mode set to medium or whatever is the default for OpenRouter, and I'm giving it the drum kit simulation test, and we'll see. Okay, so this one didn't really think to reason very much, if anything at all, but regardless, we'll see what we get. So let's check out our drum kit simulation. That was, of course, run through OpenRouter, but still using GPT-5.4. All right, we're getting another error, and I'm noticing a lot of these web results that we're seeing are having errors on the initial try, and then it fixes them and it does a great job. All right, let's take a look at our fixed drum simulator. This is very good. Most of the drums are arranged here pretty much where they would be in real life. We also do have the kick pedal. Okay, so that's okay because you're not supposed to, based on the prompt, be able to actually click these and have the sounds play. But overall, I'm going to say just what I noticed initially is it seems very, very competent at 3D design. Regardless, let's actually try and make sure that we get some sound. We do, and the effect, I like that. That looks good. There's a nice movement effect there. Let me see if I can turn this up. Very, very good. All right. Good sounding. And we also do have a slight effect here of how the actual hi-hat would look. Even though if the bottom one is kind of inverted, that's okay. I'll give it that. Toms. Good. Let's try the floor tom. Should be low. Not bad. Crash. And then ride. That's not bad at all. Of course, now let's try our Phil Collins test. That was not part of the test, and that was accidental, but I'm very glad that this would be like the world's best death metal drummer. Okay, so that doesn't happen with the other things. That's just fascinating. All right, since we're stuck using this in OpenRouter, I'm going to set the thinking effort to high. I'm going to create a new chat and then give it a C++ self-contained skateboarding game test, as this is always a very fun to play test, assuming it does work, which it very likely should. I just checked ChatGPT. It's the same account, everything on my other computer, and I don't see this message limit error, so I'm starting to believe that is a bug and not a feature. So we've received our skatepark C++ code result, and it is a little over 1,000 lines of code. I think that's one of the longer results I've ever seen for this specific test. It also does give us the specific build command for Linux. Now keep in mind that I did run this on whatever the default reasoning level is for using GPT-5.4 thinking through OpenRouter due to whatever is bugging out that's telling me I've hit my limit, even though on a different computer with the same account it's not showing that and it's still actually working. So regardless, it's a new launch. So let's see if it compiles properly without errors, and then it should launch here. It does, very good, and we do actually have, I'm going to say, this is an improvement that I notice right here, is oftentimes the ramps and rails and things like that will not be drawn 100% correctly. I'm not seeing that here. This actually looks pretty darn good, so now I suppose I should verify it works, but okay, very good. We do have some movement. It's hard to tell, but I do see individual wheels on the skateboard and it's oriented properly. So A and D is to steer. Jump works, and we actually do get some arm movement when he jumps, like his arms move when he lands back in the ground. Not bad at all. All right, in air, Q and E is for 180-degree spin. Whoa, look at that camera and that movement, and we're getting the score iterating up. Sorry, let me move the mouse out of the screen. I love these games. I love C++ skateboard games. All right, can we grind on the rail? Oh, yeah, beast mode. And the camera snaps are pretty cool. Kickflip, perfect. Let's see. So this is a box. We wouldn't be able to grind on that, but okay, that's actually good. So we bailed and our combo was lost there, but that shows some. Oh, I hit the reset button. That's my fault. I know this may sound silly, but this actually to me shows a big improvement. Okay, right as I say that, it just does some wonky stuff like that, but just the actual drawing of the skate park, this shows to me a pretty decent improvement, actually. As I was saying earlier, most times the items like the ramps get kind of drawn like this, where some faces aren't necessarily visible. I did not initially see that as an issue, and this purple ramp here, truthfully, is really quite good. Let's do a heel flip. Okay, do a kick flip. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, what the... Why? Right as I'm like saying, you know, I'm really impressed by this. That happens. I don't know that I could replicate that if I tried. That was quite something. So now I think as one of the final tests I'm going to perform here, I'm telling it to create the Sven restaurant website test, which is something I like to test. I have improved the prompt just a slight bit, but essentially it needs to create a very high-end looking restaurant website for the Sven restaurant, which is famous for their garbaggio dish, where they take food from the trash and turn it into a 5-star culinary experience. So here's our Sven restaurant website. It is very interesting, and something I'm going to say I notice is most times generally when doing this, I see a big hero section right here for the website. This actually did things differently and seems to have its own kind of stylistic way, where we have whatever this is, which seems to be like an animation of the ingredients or something. It's actually kind of neat. I just didn't expect it. So I don't know that that's a bad thing. We also do see first and foremost Stockholm appointment only from 5,800 euro for a meal, being that this is of course also the world's most expensive restaurant. Waste rendered exquisite. Renowned as the world's most expensive exclusive restaurant, Sven stages a nightly tasting around garbaggio, a 5-star avant-garde culinary masterpiece composed entirely from discarded ingredients found in trash bins, then transformed into something severe, rare, and almost indecently beautiful. Read the manifesto. Interesting thing for a restaurant to have, but regardless. Okay, and it just brings us here. Luxury begins where attention returns. This is a very, it's very simple, but not in a bad way. It's just a lot of the AIs tend to have like a specific design style. This is different than what I've normally seen. We even have a scroll bar indicator down here at the top, which is not something I've really seen before. Value is not inherent, it is perceived. Before dawn, our foragers trace the city's most discreet backdoors and bins, markets, hotels, private kitchens, service alleys, and rescue what has been rejected too early. What arrives discarded leaves revered. Here's our signature dish, and I think I'm now realizing this little animation is actually just what the food would look like plated, which definitely now makes more sense. To be honest with you, this looked like an egg, but down here when I saw the one on the black and gray plate, it made more sense. $3,200 supplement, birch reduction and cellar pour, one composition nightly. Prepared entirely from discarded ingredients found in trash bins, garbaggio is the house's defining contradiction. Burnt peel turned to silk, stale crumb worked into lace, exhausted greens lifted into fragrance, forgotten sweetness coaxed from bruised fruit and char. It is not parody, it's precision. And then we have our specific course here from 1 to 4. Silence, ritual, and severe beauty. 14 seats only, a cellar of contradiction. Approval before arrival. One seating nightly, no walk-ins. Address disclosed only after confirmation by concierge. Wow, this is very special. Oh. And then we have, this is a good looking, tell us what brings you to Sven. Applications are reviewed within 24 hours, so you can't even just book, you have to apply. We have a concierge at sv-en.se, very interesting. Dress, location, and then a simple footer. A very unique result. Okay, so fortunately my limit has been removed, and I'm just going to leave it on standard thinking here, and for the last thing, I'm giving it this 3D highway racing game prompt on standard thinking because I found it seems to actually do quite well on this thinking mode. And that was very, very quick. All right, let's check out our highway racer game result. Interesting, so it does have this style of like UI, which is something we've seen before. This is a very intricate beginning test for this game. Oh wow, okay. Velocity S4, and the specifications here of these cars are quite well done. We even have different color selections, although I don't see, maybe it just gives us a, okay, this is nice. Can I speed up? Yes, and there should be some form of boost. Okay, awesome. The nitrous boost. Huh. All right, I like this. I'm going to say the traffic movement is quite dynamic. And what I mean by that, so it's interesting. We didn't spawn in the same look. Oh, okay, good. So there's the city. The street lamps are drawn well, the trees, and the amount of traffic movement is pretty, like, there's a lot of it. Though I have to stay still, the best result I think I've ever received for this test was GLM 4.7, which is just so weird, but it just had nice lighting on the vehicles and things like that. Although I will say, for this model and on the thinking like setting that we ran this on, this is a nice result. This is definitely, and this car is stronger, so we just yeeted that one, and our damage is 93% critical. Okay, and I do like the crash effects, and it goes to black, and then we go back here. So I wonder, does it cycle through different colors for these cars? Doesn't seem to. Let me try this one more and see if we get a yellow or black one. Okay, no, that's all right. So overall, that's going to conclude our first look and testing of GPT-5.4 thinking. I wanted to test it on a bunch of different thinking modes with some comparisons of the same prompt, like what we tried with the subway test, which didn't work well for the third highest level of thinking, whichever one that was, but I wanted to give us the capability to see how this performs in varying levels of thinking. Something I quickly do want to touch upon that I did not in the introduction is this is very interesting. They're updating the ability of this to look at high fidelity images, which can support full fidelity perception up to 10.24 million total pixels or 6,000 pixel maximum dimension. So that just seems kind of cool depending on what specific task you're using this for. Regardless, though, I do have to say, it's a good model, but a part of me does wonder if this was released a bit earlier than had initially been planned, just due to some of the PR that has been surrounding OpenAI lately and the Anthropic drama and OpenAI drama and things of that sort. So I do have to wonder, because it did make some pretty consistent errors in making our 3D web games, which were pretty simple, and it fixed them almost immediately, but I just wouldn't have expected that. Additionally, I am going to say it does seem like a very big speed increase, as these scripts did get produced fairly quickly, even on harder thinking modes like extended or heavy, comparatively to what I've seen before. Additionally to that, it seems to have some pretty good design chops. I will say one of the things I really liked the most here was the skateboarding game, and perhaps I'm just a sucker for these skateboarding results, but I liked the way it did this. I thought everything was very cleanly drawn, and it did over 1,000 lines of code for this, which is a bit higher than I normally see. Additionally to this, of course, how could I forget a notable mention would of course be our ship game, which did need a few tries to properly get working, but the island, the water effects, the actual combat, and what happens when we lose, which is when we sink, this was a really nice result. And now I'm noticing even right here still, I'm picking up additional things. Look at the way the cannons actually kind of retract in when they shoot. So watch the right side right here. That's just cool. I like this game. This was a cool result. And of course, we also had the very, very high-speed kick drum. Our browser OS was at this point what one would expect. And to be honest with you, there's only like so many, like it has to have a certain look to it. So that constrains some of the potential crazy detail capabilities. Although now that I'm looking at this, I did not see a terminal, which was odd. Regardless though, we had a Sven restaurant where it tried to actually draw like animations of the dishes, which was pretty interesting. And once I realized what that was, I was interested in that. This seems to have its own kind of website design style that is not something I've really commonly seen before among other models. So for better or worse, it does seem like this has some new kind of aesthetic choices, could be said. Our racing game was, of course, decent. And this is a game that still, I mean, the map and everything like that was actually quite good in terms of detail and what I've seen before. But I don't know, it wasn't like the best, but I didn't also have this on the highest thinking mode. This was actually on like standard thinking. So when you factor that in, this is actually a pretty strong result comparatively to like what we would have seen prior on that thinking level. And our 3D printer simulation was suspiciously good, just the way that you can actually see the plastic going all the way to the nozzle and how that actually maintains being connected. I've never seen that before in doing this test. It also had nice movement, and it even had an enclosure where we can see like this plastic or glass material designed to shield one from the printer. I didn't even notice this before. There's also a screen there that's actually pretty nicely created in terms of like the 3D capability. So this was a very, very strong result. Additionally to this, I have to say I found it kind of interesting that the subway station test we ran with multiple different thinking modes, the one with the lowest thinking mode was actually really well done comparatively to what we saw. And then of course when we look at the one that was created with the longest thinking mode, the architecture of the station and everything like that became far more grandiose and pretty, although still the original one, I mean, it still had kind of like that tile detail. It did have the city rail diagram. So it's always interesting for myself, at least, to see the differences in generations on the same prompt, depending on the reasoning level that has been set. So overall, that is going to conclude our first look and test of the newly released GPT-5.4 thinking model. I do believe that when we encountered that issue here, we're being rate limited. I would go out on a limb and say that was a glitch, especially because I checked on a different computer where I was logged into the same exact account, and it allowed me to run queries with that model. So I would heavily assume that was just kind of a glitch or a new release hiccup. So that's going to wrap up our video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or on the Discord, and thanks for watching.